So I'm just going to jump in. Again, my name is Cara Hawkins-Jedlicka. I am at Washington State University. I tried to wear as much red today because my slide deck is purple and it is homecoming and we're not exactly big UW fans. We are the other Washington school. So what I would like you to do in the chat for me is think of a person you go to for advice. Why do you value their advice? What makes them trustworthy? And kind of think of one word, one adjective, and just stick it in the chat for me. Okay, not seeing a lot of responses, but think of what you have in your mind. Okay, there we go. Unbiased opinions, expertise, experience. Yeah, all really good items, right? Honesty. They're the trusted source. So we're seeing a lot of really good words that I think can be kind of summed up in maybe one really good adjective, which is authentic. So authenticity, or being authentic, is being not false. You're not being copied. You're really genuine and you're real, right? You're really valuing you valuing the truthfulness, and you trust their opinion. And they're going to tell you if that hair color looks awful on you, or if that dress that you bought for your sister's wedding, just no, that color is not the color you need to go with. They will maybe also really guide you in the right way, based on their own experience, right? So we're really looking at that authentic self coming to you as a human. So we know that about 90% of consumers said that authenticity is important when deciding which brands they like and support. This is from a 2019 study. I was trying to find more recent numbers. I know 2019 doesn't seem that far away, but it was before the pandemic, so there is a little bit of change. We also know, and was highlighted in our first session, that Gen Z is really good at kind of spotting or not being swayed by by kind of marketing speak, by maybe being a little bit false. They really prefer brands that are real and organic. We'll lump millennials in there too, as opposed to something that is maybe perfect and well packaged. They prefer maybe to see a little bit of the messiness or make it feel like it's a little bit more human. Overall, authenticity has been studied in public relations for, I was seeing studies all the way back, and this is just because my library doesn't really go much further back in this on campus, until maybe in the 1980s. It's been around for a while. How we approach it has changed. So our agenda today, we're going to look at authentic public relations. We're going to talk about crafting authentic public relations, and then finally leveraging that authenticity and how you can kind of make that claim or make this very apparent to your students. Students know they value it, but I think sometimes they have a little bit of an idealized version of what public relations should be compared to what it actually is. So when we think about authentic public relations, we might think a little bit about what it isn't, right? It isn't reality TV. I don't know the ages of everybody in here, but if you remember the lovely opening line of a certain reality TV show that goes, "This is a true story of 7 strangers picked to live in a house, work together, and have their lives taped to find out what happens when people start being polite and start getting real." This is the real world, right? But we know from the back ends of it, we've seen what has happened and heard about the manipulation that happens on reality TV. So we can really think about how reality TV is maybe the essence of what we're trying not to produce, right? We're not trying to be inauthentic or kind of create the drama. We're trying to share a true story. So this is the definition of public relations that PRSSA, the Public Relations, or PRSA, Public Relations Society of America, uses. Public relations is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and publics. I don't know what your students discuss in class, but we actually had this discussion the other day if the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce relationship is public relations, because it is a strategic communication process that is mutually beneficial between relationships, even if it is an actual true relationship. So when we're thinking about public relations, we are thinking about usually an org and their publics, right? And we have really moved past previous models of public relations and are now situated in a two-way symmetrical model. This two-way symmetrical model allows us to get feedback from our audiences directly without maybe having that, middleman. The goal of that symmetrical communications model is one that embraces negotiation between the org and its publics, and one that also kind of fosters that mutual understanding. And really, for this audience to work, audience must really perceive the organization as authentic. And when they do, they're more likely to speak well of the organization. This study from Shin and Kim in 2012 really prove this point, right? So we have the symmetrical communication, the perceived authentic organizational behavior, the organization's public relationship, and then where that messaging went. So when they perceive your org as authentic, they're more likely to talk well of it. So what is authentic public relations? So a lot of those lovely adjectives that you gave me at the start really were really kind of what we're talking about here, right? So they're truthful. You are true to your organization's values, and you're communicating in a way that is maybe not nefarious, that isn't slimy, isn't that term that we just despise in public relations. You're not being a spin master of it. You're being very upfront and truthful. You're also being transparent. I am sticking around for the next session where we're talking a little bit about crisis calm, but being transparent in crisis communication is actually very important, along with being empathetic. But being transparent is really, admitting to one's mistakes, not erasing the messiness, and really, saying, hey, we did this thing and now we're learning. I do this a lot by showing case studies, and we typically talk about it in class about that transparency aspect of it. And I know, like, recently I just pulled one from a brand that I follow where the transparency was not there. You need to be consistent. And this is not like consistency in posting. This is not like we make sure we post at 1 p.m. every day. This is meaning that you stay true to what you value. You're not going to take wide swings. So you're not you're not going to go from saying one thing to the next and having two conflicting views of it, unless you're maybe transparent and say where that change came from. And then finally, we really want to make sure we're genuine. Shin and Kim really to define this as, intention are being moral, are trying to be morally good as much as possible, without maybe being a little bit, thinking about business objectives as much. Okay, so we talked about kind of what authentic public relations is, right? So we know that we need to be genuine, we need to be truthful, we need to be transparent. And we know also that generations now can kind of spot it real easily. We're making sure that like facts are facts, and we're really trying to kind of build that relationship within that public relations realm. So we're thinking about crafting authentic public relations. We kind of need to think about how we approach it and what's important within crafting that and what we're going to pass on to our students, right? Okay, first question, and I promise I did not see the first session. Do your students often write kind of overly fluffy? I like to call it fluffy. Or as if it comes kind of from maybe that chat GPT type text where it seems like they're using adjectives that are like, and lots of descriptors that are something like awesome, amazing, once in a lifetime, this is the best deal. Okay, I'm going to see what you guys kind of pick on this, but I know I've been running into it lately in my public relations writing course. And, you know, we typically have conversations a little bit about like, hey, we need to cut this out. If we are pitching to a journalist, this isn't going to fly. They need to understand that this is not something that needs to be elevated to marketing speak, even though that kind of puts marketing in maybe a bad light, or promotional speak, right? Okay, let me see what we got here. I think actually you guys are in my reverse. There's only 3 of you. But most of you are saying no. One of you is saying yes. I will say I have found it lately just that we're loving to kind of see what taking text from maybe like emails they receive from like Anthropology or that promotional email type of voice. So we want to kind of go away from that and let our students understand where they're going to gain less of that promotional sounding talk and text. So with anything, I think when we're thinking about crafting campaigns or crafting authentic public relations, we need to know who our audience is. And research and audience work is at the base level of any great public relations campaign. We need to know who they are. So understanding what demographic they're in, what that demographic, you know, kind of values. So age, gender, income, etc. You want to know why you want them to support you. So why are you trying to get them to your side? And, you know, really, what are their attitudes and aspirations? And then you want to know where they are. And this is not just like geographic. I think, as we have said, you know, public relations, marketing has really gone from a little bit of small town or regional to a much international level, right? So you want to know what social media networks they're on. What's the easiest way to reach them? What communities have they formed online? So I didn't do it today, but like I sew my own clothes. So I, you know, I'm part of a Facebook group online where we talk sewing. And I will say most of the people who are part of that group are in the UK. So it's really funny to me because typically I don't get answers to my questions until the next morning, right? But we have formed that community online. And if someone was trying to do public relations specifically, maybe to, you know, people who sew are, people who sew at home are hobby sewers, sewists, they would maybe reach out to that community. And once you know that audience, you want to take time to listen. And I'm talking about social listening and not so much social monitoring, right? Social monitoring, typically brands do this where they have like alerts for, you know, hashtags that their brand's using, their name, etc. No, I'm talking about really kind of getting deep into that work and really thinking about social listening. So social listening is when you track your social media platforms for mentions and conversations related to your brand, or a community aspect of it. So you're inside the community to really understand what is going on with a community that is part of your brand. Then you analyze them for insights to kind of discover opportunities to act. You understand what your audience is drawn to, what they're talking about, and who they're listening to. You typically want to monitor for pain points. So is there a conversation being had about, not being able to understand the new plan for the downtown area, or not finding a link somewhere? Are there trending items within the community that you need to jump on that can easily be related to in a brand? This is a really good skill for any social media manager. You can pass this down to your students, to being able to like jump on a meme or a trend pretty quickly. And then also thinking about those opinion leaders within that space and where they see items, or where they see kind of that community going or being led to. So where do you find that authenticity then? What is going to really be there? So authenticity is really your brand or your org, and your audience's preferences, and the two in the middle, right? So it is the intersection of your brand values, personality, and your audience needs. You put your why and their why together. So these are two ways that I kind of demonstrate this in class. I do a lot of things where it's maybe not so much homework, but in class activities, mostly because despite maybe this presentation, I don't like talking for a long time. So one of my favorite things, and I did this earlier in the semester with my personal branding class, is I do kind of a tailoring messaging type activity where I divide the class into teams. And this is old school. I have, one bucket that is some type of message that they have to explain. I keep them pretty broad. So like explain a movie plot, and that's it, right? That's the one thing they have to explain. And then they have another bucket of people they have to explain it to. So they'll pull the message, they'll pull the audience, and then they kind of get together, and then they have to explain to me how they're going to explain to that group. And then in round 2, they keep the same message, but they pick a different group. So for example, when I ran this previously last week, one of my groups chose to explain a resume workshop that PRRSSA was putting on to me as their instructor, because that was what they pulled. Their next group they had to explain it to was a group of supermodels. And this shows them that they do have to tailor their approach to how they talk to different audiences. The other thing I like to do is kind of get to know my students a little bit better. Helps a little bit with the social belonging in a classroom too. And I have them kind of deep dive into a community that they're a part of. So I have students who are really very much like book talk, and are really into the fantasy side of things. And so they did a deep dive, and then they share a piece of lingo, a trend, or popular content, or an influencer they follow, and we kind of go through them in class and have a good time just sharing. So the next thing we kind of want to think about is, how do we leverage this authenticity? How do we know how do we leverage kind of this authenticity we're trying to build? So a lot of this goes back to theories, and I know I like theories sometimes get people just to like glaze over their eyes. But this is a very simple theory, and it is still pretty relevant today. And it's the two-way flow model. We know that the use of social media is ever increasing. As of 2022, the average daily usage is up to 2 hours and 27 minutes universally. And this has really kind of led to this rapid growth and adoption of social media and spread, consumption, and creation of content by users and content creators. We're really kind of seeing a little bit more dynamic content creation. As I said, this isn't really that new. The two-step flow model is from 1940. It was a study done about the American presidential election conducted by Lazarfield. And what it showed is that the findings kind of demonstrated that mass media did not affect the audience directly, but worked rather through opinion leaders who acted on the more passive segments of the population to influence your behavior patterns. The theory was further developed, and this proposed that consumers respond to messages disseminated by mass media that are mediated by opinion leaders who pass on their own interpretation of the information. So what does this mean for us? We can just see these opinion leaders as influencers, people in the community, etc. So having them kind of be building that community and building that voice is going to help with that authenticity. And then we've continuing with that kind of thought process, we can see too what type of content highly impacts people's purchasing decisions, and that consumer created content is really there, whereas kind of that professional brand image has really gone down. So some ideas on how to really kind of leverage that no filter PR. You need to find human stories to feature or pitch. And this is going to be being part of the community. Your students, when you're talking to them, know your university community probably better than you do, likely. And so they're going to know those stories or items that are going to happen. They also maybe don't know your town or maybe the location that you're in. I still have students who haven't like traveled across the line to Moscow, which is like 10 minutes down the road for us to eat at restaurants. So knowing where that community is and who you are is really important. So when you're finding those human stories, don't be afraid to kind of dig into what is going on campus or in your org and really shaping it so it elevates your objectives and your goals. You want to be truthful and transparent to build trust. Again, we're going to listen on a session about crisis comm, and this is really important there. So I'm not going to take too long here, but doing crisis comm or having them, I have my students do a lovely crisis comm activity at the end of the semester where they have to pretend to be the CEO of an org and respond to something and videotape it like I'm doing right now, as if they were doing it to a response to the public, right? So really understanding how to have that empathy and a little bit of that and being truthful and transparency and how that helps build trust along the way is really important. Work and collaborate with influencers. I do a lot of work in name, image, and likeness, and oftentimes I'm a little surprised about maybe the brand partnerships that are happening and the ones that aren't happening. Really think about who has that voice in your community and how you can leverage them. Again, we've seen too with authenticity that influencers or content creators, especially micro and macro or micro, have more of a effect than true celebrity on purchase or kind of trust. Make sure also that you're paying them. Don't just like use their stuff and don't pay them. Have a conversation, especially if they're at a certain level. And then finally, highlight user-generated content and respond as a human online. One of the things that we used to do at my previous job when I was in higher ed marketing was we realized that we got a lot of lovely response and engagement with pictures of the first snow. Yes, I am in that type of area. We will probably get the first snow before Halloween. I'm hoping not. But what we ended up doing was like the first time we did it, we sent our photographers out to do, to take snow pictures. By the time we had run this like 3 years in a row, we asked for the pictures of the first day of snow and highlighted them. And that way we were building that kind of community and highlighting something that worked well for them. And, when you're talking to people online, you do want to respond kind of in a human voice. You need to have that level of empathy. You need to have that level of like concern, and you need to come from like a human aspect of it, instead of maybe those kind of perfect, shiny writing that we will see sometimes when we know that the statement has been really like a lot of hands have been like, touched into it. I'm only going to like show you a couple of examples. Well, yeah, I'll show you a couple of examples here. I'm going to see if my screen will share correctly with these. So give me a second, and then I have one more slide after this. So Okay, so Fenty Beauty.
Playing on this?
Okay, so then I will just go ahead and explain to you what's happening because, yeah, I'm not going to try to figure that one out. So Fenty Beauty does a really good job of being really inclusive, especially with their shades of, shades of foundation, etc. So for, Latin Heritage Month, they spotlighted someone who was in their business or in their, worked for them and what it means to her and let her kind of do the video, right? So this is something that is very easy and is something that they're able to highlight with a little bit of video. Panagonia does a good job with this too. Having someone write a story for them about using their product as part of a trip or summoning and taking photos and using their photos really is helpful. And then finally, I'll highlight Sperry a little bit. They did Sperry. We all kind of think of those boat shoes, at least I do. And they ended up doing a pretty good influencer campaign where it seemed a little bit more organic, where they seeded some influencers, but then went a step further. So when we're looking at kind of that authentic public relations or no filter PR, we can see a lot of, we can often see, nope, that is not the screen I want to share. We can often see a lot of good examples. And I don't know why I'm no longer on video. We're not going to worry about it right now, though. So finally, as we kind of come up to the last part of this, how can you kind of think about this in your classroom? And there's two ways that I like to kind of really think about talking to audiences and maybe creating that authentic PR and demonstrating it in class. One of my favorites is I call it meme the class. And I ask them to make a meme about the class that maybe only the class will understand. It's really funny. And it's really interesting to kind of see how they expect that what's going to be kind of an in joke for that community. So I'm really kind of saying, hey, if I shared this outside my class, people maybe wouldn't get it, but it is funny for this class specifically. And then finally, I do another one that I call Bewitching Pitching, and this is definitely just going straight into pitching. This is an improv game where I have them select a journalist and also then a topic and then a way they're going to deliver the pitch. And they have to come up with a way of that pitch, and we talk it through in class. So we're able to kind of cut out maybe that vagueness or that over the topness that they like to kind of hit at. Here is my info. If you need to find me, I am at Cara Bird on mostly everything. And so I'm going to turn my screen off sharing, and we're going to see if I can actually have my face shown.
Cara, at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little bubble with a camera. And if you maybe click on and off that, that might turn your camera on for you. While you're doing that, I just want to thank you for your presentation. That was fantastic. I love that you do the meme exercise. Oh, we lost her. Hopefully she can get back on. There you go. Great, you're here.
I hit the button and it took me out of the screen.
That's okay. We can see you and hear you now, so that's perfect. I was saying I love that you do the meme exercise. We do a meme exercise sometimes on Fridays here in student marketing, and it's a fun activity that we do. So I can see how that would be really fun in a classroom setting. We do have some questions for you. The first is from Julie. How do you teach your students influencer screening?
Yeah, so it is something that I'm ever evolving and ever working on. And I really think that what I get down to is making sure that we're looking, if they're looking at somebody, they need to go through their content, understand if that content is talking to the audience they're trying to talk to. Being of the community is really important. And then making sure that like you're kind of doing a little bit of a deep dive on like their past, making sure you're Googling them, and then just kind of what they create. I really kind of appreciated the Fenty Beauty campaign because it was someone within their own organization. So the screening maybe wasn't as hard and they shared it on their main page. I also teach it the opposite way because I am teaching a personal branding class for athletes, creators, and influencers currently. And that we actually talk about trying to align our values with the brand and understanding if the brand is a right fit for us. And if the brand understands our personality.
Great. We had a question from Stephen. Is there a danger in using AI in PR campaigns and copy?
I think there is. I think, and I actually really appreciated the first session because I do some activities that are similar in class. I mean, first of all, it might be the like wrong information or the information to not be exactly correct with AI. I think the other danger is that it does sometimes come off as seeming maybe a little fake. And I think we are getting better at like kind of spotting what's fake and what's not. Last semester, and we haven't gotten to the point in this semester, I had AI try to solve a problem, write a blog post to solve a problem that was happening in Congress, and that was because Congress didn't understand TikTok. And so I had my students come up with a prompt, ask them to write a blog post explaining TikTok to Congress. And what we found out was like, if you just use a vague prompt, it doesn't work, right? And then going further into that, the ones that did actually like, I think the best one was like, explain TikTok like you were talking to my 80-year-old grandma. And like that was the best prompt, right? But they still had to go in and add some things. And on top of that, we really tried to hit a lead that would make it more relatable to the people who are looking it up.
Great. I've noticed that when I use ChatGPT, the more I get in and refine that, the better result I get. Seth asked, what are the best unbiased sources for information when teaching students how to navigate PR in crisis communications?
That will probably be a really good question for the next session. um, you know, it's interesting because I think I get a lot of my knowledge from being on the ground. I worked for University of Idaho, and there was several crises. Luckily, I was not there last year, and you guys can look up what happened there last year. But there's several crises that I navigated, and I'm coming to find out that a lot of my on-the-ground expertise helps in certain situations. I cannot list you the like list right now, but I have read several papers recently, especially because I'm looking at empathy in public relations, about how to craft an empathetic statement. They're mostly academic journals. Hit me up on one of my like lovely channels and I will find you that paper because it was really good. And I really appreciated that. We're also in my influencer class. There's a good paper about Lance Armstrong handling his image. And so my class is going to read the paper and then watch one of his interviews and we'll just dissect it in class about kind of understanding that personal brand crisis.
Great. Is there a specific brand you use as an example of great authenticity?
So I really do appreciate Fenty Beauty, mostly because I do think they're pretty authentic. I will also say, like, I like to sometimes show the opposite more than like the real one. And I hate to say this about a brand because I actually worked with this brand before. I have a podcast where we interview the pioneers of women's distance running. It's a whole nother thing. But I've worked with this brand. And so there is a case last week where they are on one end saying they're inclusive and to all runners. And then on the opposite side, they posted a thing, talking about using kind of a quote from somebody who was a known kind of snob, didn't think women should be in the marathon, and kind of talking about the elitism of hitting a certain time. After that, they got roasted, especially by a lot of people who were maybe put into a weird spot where they were like funding their really good work to make running more inclusive. They deleted the post. So we kind of have like showing the like opposite side of it is almost easier than like maybe showing the true side of it.
That makes sense. Our last question is, do you have a favorite activity you do with your students to help them better understand authenticity?
Yeah, I think the meme one's pretty good just because we're talking about audiences. And it's funny because I think sometimes we talk more about authenticity in my classes because we talk about current events in public relations. So in my intro to public relations class, every week I have them talk about a current event in public relations, and that's all they have to post about on a discussion board, and then we bring it into the classroom. And so once we bring it into the classroom and kind of can talk about those things, we can really kind of dissect it and understand maybe typically these public relations things are things that they feel strongly about. We can really kind of dissect it. So, I learned a lot about football one season that I did not know. I do sport, I just don't do NFL. I'm not teaching intro right now, but we had a whole conversation about the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift relationship and the way the NFL is leveraging it and kind of how it's feeling a little weird and a little inauthentic because it's almost feeling a little bit like, hey, women don't like sports, they don't watch it, but Taylor Swift's here, and kind of understanding why that hits nerves in a different way. And I think sometimes just having those kind of like current event discussions is maybe the best way of looking at things. There's also a really good YouTube or TikTok creator, Molly McPherson, who kind of goes behind the scenes with celebrity PR. And I love just to use her videos. She had a really good one on the Joe Jonas, Sophia Turner thing, divorce. So that's typically where those kind of conversations come from.
Great. Well, Cara, thank you so much. This was a great presentation. It's so relevant and timely, and appreciate you and your time and joining us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm definitely staying around for the next session. I love listening about crisis comm.
Perfect.